These past few updates have been just meta upon meta upon meta. All the way back from 3.3.4, we got Mavis, which was a PvP meta. And then after that, we got Jinchu. His release wasn't meta, but after he got buffed, he was definitely PvP meta. Liam, PvE meta. Haley, PvE meta. Feng Shun, PvE, and to some extent PvP as well. Daji, definitely PvP meta currently. Iki, when he was released, he was definitely PvP meta. Fushi, when he was released, again, one of the best teams in PvP. Wu Yu, currently the best PvP team in the game. And then Sakura, part of the best team in the game with Wu Yu. Fatima probably is going to shake the meta as well because you can run her in the Mavis comp and she probably will be crazy for that team. With that being said, all of these metas right here, I've decided to make a tier list to just discuss on which units are going to be safe to R6 and which are not safe. This list will not include all espers. When I don't include an esper, it doesn't mean that the unit is bad. It just means that the unit either doesn't need R6 to work, like for example Haley. Haley will not be in this list because you get her R0, that's 90% of her kit, right? Getting her to R6 will only unlock you 10% of her kit, which means it's not worth it to R6 her. Non-Shimmer Legendary Espers will not be included, it will have its own video. And the criteria that I judge these Espers, whether they're safe to R6 or not, is depending on several factors. Number one, PvE, it's going to be for Ritual Miracle leaderboard, it's going to be for Dislyte Lens leaderboard. Now why these two leaderboards? Because right now we have championship going on and you want to have a very good team for each of those leaderboards so that you can get better rewards from championship. They're not considered too high when I'm factoring this safe to R6 or not because the rewards aren't too good, right? The next PvE content that I highly consider is going to be Falsetto Fantasy because it does provide you with the bulk of PvE rewards. For PvP, it's going to be for Point War, gives you Nexus Crystals, it's going to be for Beat Bout, it's going to be for Knockout, and now it's also going to be for club content because club content is giving you very good rewards per week. If you're a new player and you saw someone soloing Infinity Tower with, let's say for example R6 height, and you base your judgment on R6ing height because of that, you are going to waste a lot of resources because by the time you get height to R3, you are already completed with Infinity Tower. Infinity Tower is a one and done activity. You should not base your decision on getting an Esper because of Infinity Tower, okay? I'm going to explain the tier list real quick. Safe to R6 is going to be 80%. It's not going to be 100% because anything can happen. Lilith can release a unit that completely transcends the meta in the next few patches, so it's never going to be 100% safe to R6 any Esper. And then 50% safe, again, that unit is borderline in and out of the meta. It's not the best team, it's like maybe the third best team, fourth best team currently in the game. And I'll be mentioning this a lot where I say like first best team or second best team or all the way down to fifth best team. What I mean by that is knockout. If a unit drops to sixth best team, then they will pretty much will not see any use in PvP anymore. So I'm going to be mentioning that a lot, so keep that in mind, okay? Risky to R6, again, they're almost out of the meta. They're, you know, fourth or fifth best team. Very risky, they're like borderline non-existent in PvP. Maybe like fifth team. And then in the 99% risk is going to be units that are pretty much nowhere to be found in the meta. Actually, I'm going to be adding one more tier to this. This is going to be the free Espers. Free Espers are always going to be a must R6 because they're free and they might not be free in the future. Even if they're bad right now, they might get buffed in the future, right? So the first one is going to be Donar. He's free. Just get him R6. If you're not even going to build him, just leave him in your account and get his resonance. That's it. Okay, so the first actual non-free unit is going to be Jinyu Yao. You get her one copy for free, but at this point, I would say Jinyu Yao is risky to R6 because she just doesn't do enough. She is the best cleanser, but she just does that. In the old days, you can use her as a bruiser because before all the power creep, supports don't do like 10 different things. Her being a cleanser and also being unable to get stunned, and then also because of her R4, it allows her to do damage based on her HP. This allows her to do pretty decent damage. If you were to run like a full tank team, she would do 200,000 damage, even sometimes 300,000 damage. But now it's just not enough. She doesn't do enough damage. She doesn't support enough. Just cleansing is not good enough at this point. She needs to have like maybe damage reduction to the entire team for her to really be worth it at this point. Next unit is going to be TA. TA right now is very risky to R6. She is a speed lead, but she is not fast enough in the current meta. She is also AoE, so she helps the enemy Wuyu to just counter attack your team like a bunch. She has double AoE on her skills. In this day and age, if you are a support or a controller, it's best to not do your attacks. So for TA to work in this current day and age, she would need to not have this attack all enemies and just AP push your entire team. That's it. Because this AoE actually hurts your team rather than help you. She used to be really good before this, but going first at this point is not really game changing anymore because we have too good of a tank team. So if you go to TA right here, right now in the gold tier, you'll see that her matches is so low, 200, 150, and the win rate is terrible as well. 1% win rate in 100 matches, that's insane. You go to a silver tier, also quite low. Also, I forgot to mention this, some of you may say that TA is working just fine for you, but keep in mind metas are developed in top 100 or top 1%. When you get to top 10%, you can pretty much use any unit, but it doesn't mean that it's optimal, right? I could use a level 1 Berenice, it doesn't mean it's optimal, right? When you get to top 1% or top 100 is where you can see how the metas are developed. When a new meta gets introduced into the game, for example Wuyu, the old meta goes down to 10%. That is why you see more Anas this time around in the lower tier. Wuyu gets introduced, Ggez gets introduced, Ana gets bumped down, down, and further down, and now she's in the top 20%. People who have Wuyu or Ggez instantly climb to top 10%. Again, TA not really worth it anymore. Her R6 just allows you to go first, but going first right now is not the meta, and her method of going first, which is AoEing first, is very bad. Next Esper is going to be Narmer. He's going to go to the 99% risk. He is good as a wave clearer, but before all of the power creep, he could actually compete in Falsetto Fantasy, especially in Dark Starlord, to keep on casting his S3, just spam it every single time you get to 12 stacks. But at this point, the DPS Espers that we have in PvE just outclasses him in every shape or form. He's pretty much a glorified wave clearer at this point. Hyde, once regarded as the best PvP unit, and he's now going to go to the lowest tier because he is just power crept beyond belief at this point. He is pretty much non-existent. Look at that, 150 matches with 18% win rate, 14%, 8%. This is in gold tier as well, oh sorry, diamond tier, where there's 5 teams. If I were to go to gold tier, he would have less matches and also even lower win rate. This one has 22%, but because of Momo, this one has 14% with Iki, and it started dwindling down ever since Genie got released. Not because Genie is the counter to him, but because Genie is a better bruiser than him. By being a better bruiser than him, he's now number 2 as the best bruiser, right? So he gets pushed down as the second best team. After Ana was released, he is now the 3rd best bruiser in the team. So now you would only use him when you enter in the silver tier. And then after Ggez rework, he is now a better bruiser than Hyde, which pushed him down even further now to the 4th best team. And then with the release of other countless bruiser espers like Jinchu, Mavis plus Jinchu was the team, and he just became the 5th best team. And then at this point to now in a diamond tier with only like 10% win rate, even less than 10% at this point, right? He's pretty much completely phased out of the meta. Okay, Ggez, another one that's gonna go straight to the last tier. Used to be good in PvE and PvP, but now with the, well, not really now, he has been out of the meta for a very long time at this point. In PvE, his main downfall is his turn count. He takes way too many turns to do his nuke, and in PvP, he just doesn't do enough damage. If he doesn't one-shot the entire team, he's gonna be left with 1 AoE attacks, and he's gonna get countered to hell, right? It's kind of unfortunate. He's still usable, just not optimal. Okay, Gabrielle. Also one of the best PvP units back in the day, but at this point, it's gonna be a 99% risk for you to R6 her. Her R6 only extends the immunity to 3 turns, and in PvP right now, we just have too many espers that strip all of the buffs. For example, Wuyu completely strip all of the enemy's buffs. And then we have Iki, we also have Chu Yao, we have Nu Si, although not quite meta at this point. She still strips with her S3. We just have too many espers that strip buffs that her R6 is pretty much pointless at this point. Sally. is the first unit to go to the 80% safe, but she is borderline in the 50% safe. Ever since the resonance changes back in December of 2022, she has been meta pretty much the entire time. All she does is provide start of turn damage reduction by 25% and also healing every single time that the Espers take, right? And why I say she's almost borderline 50%, they can definitely power creep her, but it's very hard to power creep a team-wide damage reduction. Providing damage reduction alone can be power creep if they decided to release like units that can ignore damage reduction. We already have a unit that ignores damage reduction, which is Taver, but Taver is not good enough in PvP, so he doesn't really change anything. And we currently have Sakura that also provides damage reduction to the entire team. And then another factor that could definitely bump her down to 50% is because they gave her not the best relics for her. You'd want her to be on Ocean Waves so that she can cycle her S3 every single time. S2, S3, S2, S3. They gave her Panacea set. She's gonna have downturns with her S1. And that's the reason why she has potential to drop down. And supports have a very good place in the meta, and they most likely will outlast the DPS Espers in the long run. If you take a look at the current knockout in Silver tier where there's only 3 teams, you're still going to use your R6 Sally with very good win rate as well, right? Because you're supporting your current DPS meta Espers, which yields you a very high win rate. Clara, also a very good PvP unit back in the day, but at this point, it's a very risky investment to get her to R6. She just doesn't heal enough. Her cleanse is not good enough as well, and also healing gets reduced pretty quickly in PvP. Her shield is not good enough because her shield is dependent on the amount of overheal you do, right? So when your healing gets to 0, she's pretty much doing nothing for you at that point. Sienna, another Esper that is going to go to the last tier. Her PvE usage is currently only in Phobiter, and she's not dependent on her R6 there. And in PvP, she is pretty much non-existent. Ever since Mavis got released, her uses in PvP pretty much became 0 because you don't want to AP control the enemies within a Wuyu comp. Sorry, not Wuyu comp, within a Mavis comp, because it just makes it worse for you. There we go, two matches in a diamond tier. Ahmed is going to go within the same tier as Jin Yao. Very risky to R6 him at this point. All of the supports who can get stunned and do nothing will slowly but surely get out of the meta. If he gets stunned, he's not going to counter attack, and he's not going to add you, or he's not going to heal you or give you all of these stacks, right? If you take a look at the supports that are in, you know, the safe tier or in the soon to be safe tier, wink wink, Sakura, they all provide stuff even when they are stunned. Ahmed doesn't do that. He only provides you with the healing if he's not stunned, and even if he's not stunned, he still doesn't provide much to your team, right? Brewster, at this point, he is exclusively a PvE unit. He used to be good in PvP, but after like some of the releases like Mavis, Ana, he just becomes unusable in PvP at this point. He's going to go in this tier right here, 50% safe, because even in PvE, his usage has been dwindling down further and further. He is still one of the best used for APEP, but in Falsetto Fantasy, his spot is kind of jeopardized. In Phobiter, he is still good, but again, not the best at this point. In Sonica, he's not that good because it's a single hit Esper. In Dark Starlord, he's still good because there's multiple enemies. His R6 allows him to do more damage to the ads, but not that much. With just 1 or 2 releases of good DPS Espers, he might just be power creep in Phobiter and eventually in Dark Starlord as well. Changji, also regarded as one of the best PvP Espers during his time. His R2 was game changing, his R6 is also game changing, but at this point is a 99% risk to R6 him. Or maybe not 99, it's probably like 10% risky, because you can still use him in a Wuyu comp, but it's not the best. If you've been here long enough, you would know that his team was the Exodia comp. Now, the Exodia comp doesn't even exist anymore. And he's only pretty much exclusively used in Wuyu comps. Any other team, he has a very low win rate, even at R6. And even in a Wuyu comp, he's the weakest link in the team. He will get pushed out of the Wuyu comp once a new defender Esper gets released. He just doesn't do enough. This is sort of like the Exodia comp, but it has 0% win rate. Another 0% win rate, another 0% win rate. If I go to Silver tier, anything that isn't Wuyu comp, has a very low win rate. This one has a 33% win rate because of Daji alone. Just not worth it to R6 anymore. Lian, my very first R6 Esper through Wishstones, and she's gonna go straight to the top tier alongside with Sally. But she's a little bit higher than Sally. You can kind of see the trend right now. Both supports are in the top tier because they work with the best DPS Espers in the meta currently. So Lian, the reason why she's here and the reason why she's gonna be in this tier in the foreseeable future as well is because if a new DPS that is game changing and meta comes into the game, you're gonna run Lian with that DPS Esper. Right now, Lian is pretty much exclusively used alongside Wu Yu and Daji comps. So the reason why you want to use her with Wu Yu is because Wu Yu has a lot of carry potential. So if you run Lian to help Wu Yu survive better, you're gonna have a lot higher win rate as opposed to running Lian with like a DPS that has no carry potential. Let's say for example, your Ggez team has 1% win rate out of 100 matches, right? If you put Lian in that team, that 1% win rate is gonna go to 5%. That's it. It's not gonna go any higher because Ggez doesn't have carry potential. She is a very good support, but she needs a very good carry potential in the DPS to get a very high win rate, and that's the reason why she's only being used in Wu Yu comps and Daji comps. Okay, Mateo. He's also going to go within the same tier as Brewster, and he has sort of the same syndrome as Ggez, but slightly less severe. He's still very good in Fafnir. That's one place that he shines very well in because of his multi-hits and his nuke. He's non-existent in PvP, but in Falsetto Fantasy, again, he is pretty much in the same situation as Brewster. His spot in Forbiter is still solid because he does provide disease debuff, but his spot in Sonica is kind of dwindling a little bit, and his spot in Dark Starlight is pretty much a glorified Team 1 unit. Running him in Team 1 and not running him is the difference is between like maybe 200 to 300,000. Not being used in Team 2 or Team 3 all that much because he takes way too many turns. His debuff gives him a bunch of AP, he gains a bunch of turns, which is why I say he's kind of like the same situation as Ggez as well. Too many turns in a DPS is not good. The current meta right now is where the DPS either does insane nuke on their turn, every single turn, or they do pursuit attacks like Embla, like Liam that also provides Embla, right? Or Yun Chuan doesn't need to take his turns, he will still do damage outside of his turns. Ethan's R6 used to be game changing for PvP when going first was the absolute meta. Going first means that you win. At this point, going first doesn't mean that you win anymore, so his R6 is kind of not game changing anymore, but the speed meta can make a comeback anytime if Lilith decides to, and if they do come back, Ethan will be in that team. But for speed meta to be the complete meta dominant for PvP, Lilith would have to release a very OP as hell Esper, because the speed meta would need you to run Speed Lead, R2 Ethan, or R6 in this case, right? And then one support to provide attack buff for your DPS Esper. And then that DPS Esper either one-shots the entire team, or you run 2 DPS Esper that can almost one-shot the entire team. And that's currently not in the meta. So going first is not really that game-changing, especially with Wu Yu running around. Ethan doing an AoE in the first turn just gives more stacks to Wu Yu. It just doesn't work that well. Embla used to be only PvE exclusive, now has some PvP viability as well because of Fushi. She's the first DPS to go to the safe to R6 Esper because her main use in PvE is in Falsetto Fantasy and it's pretty much uncontested at this point. In Dark Starlight, she is the best scoring team possible, and the team revolves entirely around her, so she will not be removed from the team even if they release like a very good DPS Esper. Embla will still be in the team, and then that new DPS Esper will substitute one of your DPS Espers that isn't in this team. For Counter Sonica, she is the second best scoring team because Team 1 is the bulk of your points, right? For Sonica. Very safe to R6. Ever since she was released, she was meta, and her PvP viability is also very high. Let's check. This is 3 patches ago, in Season 9 of Knockout. And if you take a look at the silver tier, her win rate is very high. 50%, 50%, 50%. Pretty much everything is above 50%, right? But as we move further into the game, her win rate just starts to dwindle down significantly from 50% to 36%. And then if you go even further, the current phase or the current knockout, the win rate that isn't running a Wu comp has below 30% win rate and even below 20% win rate. And that's how fast the meta is developing right now. With each update, a new meta is developed and old metas will be pushed down in terms of win rate, and they will be pushed down, it will continue to be pushed down. But she is safe to R6 because her PvE viability has not dropped one bit. Yamato, he's gonna go to very risky because his only place right now in PvP is in the Wu comp. If the Wu comp gets better defender espers, he's gonna be subbed out and he's never gonna be used in PvP at all anymore. It's very easy for him to get replaced in the Wu comp. Better defender espers gets released, boom, he's gone. Jinchu, after his buff, he's definitely meta defining, but I cannot put him at safe to R6. I'm gonna put him in this tier right here. Now before you go ham at me, he has one of the best sustain, which gives him a shield every single time you get hit, right? And it's reactive shield that reacts to every single hit. It's not per attack, it's every single hit. And in PvP, he has crazy win rate as well. This is the current meta and he has 50% plus win rate, 68%. But in Point War, he's arguably the best team if you do build him right, because he can counter pretty much everything in the meta right now. Now why do I put him 50% safe instead of in this tier right here? All it takes is for Lilith to release 1 or 2 more espers that ignore shield and Jinchu will be in very big trouble. We already have one unit that ignores shield, which is Fushi, but his S3 doesn't ignore shield, only his passive right here, which is not good enough. And Jinchu's only form of sustain is his shield, right? If the unit ignores shield, he's gonna be in very big trouble. So he can't go in the top tier right there. Genie also used to be a very good bruiser. At this point, very risky to R6er. She's not completely out of the meta thanks to Chu Yao, but even Chu Yao can't really provide much support to her at this point. She is entirely carried by Chu Yao at this point. If you take a look at the win rate, the good win rate always includes Chu Yao in the team. If you take a look at any other team that does not have a Chu Yao, has a very low win rate, 4%, 8%, she just doesn't sustain enough. The healing gets reduced pretty fast and her healing only procs once per turn. We have units that do like 3 pursuits at the same time. For example, Wu Yu, she does her S3, S2 followed up with her S1, and Genie will only heal up once during that 3 hits. Okay, Liam, he's gonna go in the top tier but borderline in this tier right here. He's very good pairing with Embla, but he suffers the same with Ggez effect, where he takes too many turns needing to use his S3 and then go into an additional turn to S1. Whereas we have units like Chu Yao at this point that just needs to cast their S1 to proc Embla to assist, right? The next to be removed from the Embla team is not him. He's probably second to be removed from the Embla team. But one reason that he can stay in the top tier right here is because of Sonica. He is currently the best strategy for Sonica, and he is also the healer for the team. It's very hard to power creep that. They can power creep in terms of damage for a new defender Esper to sub him out of Sonica Team 1, but that DPS Esper would also need to heal the entire team. Right now, if you use the Liam strategy, you don't need to run a healer in your team, and that's why he stays in the top tier right here. In PvP, he's still good in the Wu comp, but pretty much exclusively in the Wu comp. Hilda, oh damn. When speed was meta, she was definitely one of the strongest espers in the game. At this point, I would put her in very risky. Her buff is not golden buff, this deep sleep, so it can get removed. Wu Yu can remove it, Iki can remove it, and also we have several espers that just don't care about getting slapped or stunned or poisoned. Wu Yu can't even get debuff, and also Chu Yao can just strip off her buff, right? The deep sleep buff. He also starts off with immunity because of the rival rune. And if you take a look at win rate, it's still decent, but it's getting carried by Chu Yao. So Chu Yao team 60%, Chu Yao team again 60%, no Chu Yao 21%. Again, no Chu Yao 27%. Almost completely out of the meta at this point. At R6, mind you. Daji. Oh man. Currently the second best team, arguably the #1 team in the game, but I cannot put her in the top tier. There are several ways to power creep her. One is a new release Esper that provides a golden rim immunity buff to the entire team. boom, she's gone. She will not win against that team anymore, because what makes her super overpowered at R6 is because of her puppet art debuff being AoE. When this is AoE, she taunts the entire team and also gain a 50% damage reduction from all of these espers that have the debuff, because she reflects 50% of the damage. That's why she's extremely tanky and also does a lot of damage. Again, like I said, second best team in the game, arguably first, but I cannot put her in the first tier, is because she can get power crept, right? Or just get countered by a new release esper, and it's pretty easy as well. If the unit is debuff immune, boom, she can't do anything about that unit anymore. Yeah, you look at the win rate is just insane. Everything is pretty much above 60% win rate. She's still one of the top tier units for APAP, and for Falsetto Fantasy, she's not the top tier. She's the second best team for Dark Starlight at this point. Again, the first team is going to be going to Embla. She's going to be second. For Sonica, she's not that good. She's a single hit esper that doesn't do much against Sonica. For Forbiter, she's good, but not the best. So her spot can definitely get replaced. She's also the queen of Desolate Lands, because she can just spam her S3, right? You can even use her in Shadowfire. I did use her in Shadowfire just because I got her R6. And the true damage from her Funeral Rite stacks does a lot of damage. Just being R6 and adding this to your team, she can pretty much slot in to any of the Desolate Lands just to give you more points for championship. But if you have a better R6 or a functional R6 at those Desolate Lands, you're not going to use her. Shu Yao. He's going to go straight to the top tier right here. His R6 is very good in PvP and in PvE. In PvE, it helps your team survive better. In PvP, it makes shield buff a lot easier to deal with, and shield is definitely one of the hardest thing to counter right now in PvP, especially with R6 Jinchu running around and also R6 Lian providing a lot of shield. He does help significantly to reduce the shield amount. The reason why he's going to stay in the meta for very long period of time is because of his passive right here, the Spirit Aegis buff. As long as a new DPS gets released into the game that is going to be meta for that period of time, he's going to be one of the best pairing with that DPS. Because now the DPS cannot get critted on, the DPS will not be able to get debuff as well. You can debuff the DPS, but it gets removed pretty much instantly. Again, he's pretty much meta for pretty much all of this Falsetto Fantasy. He's in Team 1 with Liam. He's in the Embla team with Forbiter. And in Dark Starlight, you can run him in Embla comp or even the Daji comp. And I've showed you this multiple times. He is pretty much going to be paired with like a very squishy DPS. And the win rate is just going to skyrocket. 68%, 60%, everything is pretty much above 60% win rate because of him. Fu Shi. He's going to go, this might sound crazy, but he's going to go in this tier right here, not safe to R6. If it weren't for Embla in PvE, this guy would be here or even here. I would like to remind you guys, this man was just released about 3 to 4 patches ago, right? We'll take a look at the Season 8 of Knockout. Okay, he wasn't even released back then. Season 9 of Knockout. You look at his win rate in Silver tier, where there's only 2 teams, or 3 teams. His win rate is pretty good, 50%, 56, 56, pretty much everything is above 50%, right? Now, we go to the next update, Season 10 of Knockout. Boom. Let's remove Wu Yu in this team. Fushi plus Embla. Win rate drops from 50, above 50% to now barely hitting 40%. We go to next, or the current phase. Now it's below 30% and below 20% win rate. He is being used in the Wu Yu comp, but his place is not solid in this team because he is one of the weakest link in the Wu Yu comp. For example, this first team right here, he is the second to be removed from the team. The first one that will get power crept is going to be Donar. And then the second one, if Wu Yu gets a better defender, he's going to be removed from the comp. This one, for example, he's going to be removed from the comp first before Yamato. He's in a very risky place in PvP right now. His R6 is not doing enough in PvP, which is kind of crazy, right? He was just released 4 patches ago, and he went from the first best team to now like 3rd or 4th best team. And his place in Wu Yu comp is also jeopardized because we can get a better defender Esper than him, and he's gone from the team. Fortunately for him though, Embla is still the top tier PvE unit, and she's pretty much not going anywhere. And he is one of the best pairing with Embla. It's kind of crazy how fast the meta is moving at this point. Okay, Momo, our new addition to the game. She's gonna go to 50% safe. I cannot put her any higher. I might even bump her down to lower because right now her ripples are tied to either pay to win. Either you straight up just buy it from the plaza, or you wait for a championship event. So at best, we could probably get her to R6 within like 4 months. If they do bring her championship event back to back to back, I don't think she's gonna stay in the top of the top meta within the next 4 months, because again, she doesn't crit, she doesn't do enough damage. She only does a lot of damage because the meta right now is defense scaling. It's Wuyu comp, so she's very good against that comp, right? If it's any other comp, her damage is not really that good. She doesn't work in PvE at all. She is in this tier because of her resonance 2 and 4. Being immune to debuffs, or pretty much immune to debuff, is very good in PvP, because then you are guaranteed a form of damage from her, right? And she does a lot of S1 damage with her passive right here. But again, I cannot put her any higher than this tier right here, because again, if a better DPS than her gets released, or a better bruiser than her gets released, she's just gonna go down and down and down even further. Sakura, another unit that is going to go safe to R6. She's very good in PvP, very good in PvE, because in PvE, she provides a lot of healing to your team, pretty much like the best healer in the team, and also provides damage. She provides speed, more defense for your team, and in PvP, she provides you with a start of turn damage reduction, which again is very good. Support in 2024 needs to be doing something even when they're stunned, and Sakura does that, right? She works in pretty much every single team in PvP at this point, and if a new DPS Esper with very good carry potential comes into the game, she's gonna be in that team as well. But for now, she's the best pairing for Wuyu because she is a defender. Wuyu supports her, she supports Wuyu. It's very hard to power creep her. The only way they can really power creep her is by, again, releasing more units that ignore damage reduction, and also stunning on every single turn that they take. The only way that you can remove the Vigor Guard is by constantly stunning. Otherwise, that buff is always going to be on the enemy Esper. And then lastly, Feng Shun. He's going to be risky to R6. His R6 doesn't change much for PvE. It does change a lot for PvP. It helps him survive better. But in PvP, his viability has dropped down every single update. He doesn't do enough damage in PvP as opposed to PvE. The meta right now heavily punishes AoE Espers. For a support to be good, they would need to support without doing AoE attacks. And Feng Shun does 2 AoE attacks with his S3 and also S2. That just adds too much stacks to Wuyu, and it allows Wuyu to cast her S3 more often than you want. And since going first is not really that game changing anymore, his purpose as an AP pusher is also not that significant anymore. Again, going first doesn't mean you win, because we don't have a good turn 1 unit that can pretty much nuke the entire team. Stall teams are just way too strong at this point that going first doesn't really make that big of a difference. Fortunately for him, his PvE standing is still very solid. He's still one of the best PvE unit in the game, the best support while also doing insane DPS, but his R6 is not game changing for PvE, and that's why it's very risky for you to R6 him. Getting him to R6 doesn't really change anything for PvE. So yeah, that's about it. This is the final list. Oh, I forgot to bring all the free Espers. There's Lucas, and that's pretty much it, right? Yeah, Lucas, not the greatest, but he's free, so get him to R6. Some of these units might make a comeback in PvP or in PvE, but it's very unlikely. If you do R6 them, you're gambling on a lot for them to be viable in the future. Be wary on who you R6, because anything can happen, right? These Espers that are in lower tier is here because they have a higher tendency to be out of the meta than all of these Espers up here. It's very risky to R6 them. You'd be wasting resources if you R6 them, because they might just be out of meta within the next couple of patches. This is a very long video. Hopefully I didn't yap for too long. But yeah, that's about it. Ciao.